Welcome back to Comic Krackle. My name's Kirby, and today I'm with esteemed comic YouTuber BJ Kicks. BJ, how you doing? Thank you for coming on.
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I don't know about a steam, maybe a head full of steam, but I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And we were just talking a minute ago. Today we're talking about Chris Robinson's remastering of the original works done for All-Negro Comics,
Yes.
America's first black comic book. And I had reached out to you originally because I had seen some of the coverage that you had done and put the book on my radar. And so whenever I had the opportunity to actually go by and pick it up at a shop, I jumped on the opportunity because, where are you going to find books like this?
Right.
So, thank you for introducing me.
Hey, no problem, man. It's I love because that video originally did not get a whole lot of play. That was my Black History Month project for 2023, I think.
Mhm.
And so I'm just excited that someone saw it and thought enough of it to go pick up the book because
Yeah.
that's what I do it for.
Hey. And it's always the fun part of making the videos and, seeing that kind of response where sometimes I'll make a video, whatever, it flops immediately, but then somebody will message me and say like, hey, I picked up this random Spider-Man book or, this completely random image book that you had happened to talk about. And now it's one of my favorite books that I've read this year. And it's like, that's so nice. Like, thank
Right.
you. Even if it's a lie. Thanks.
For sure. Lie to me. Help me out.
Yeah. So with this book, going into some of the aspects that, I definitely wanted to talk to you about the characters and the creation of this book. Originally created by Orrin C. Evans, a myriad of black cartoonists in Philadelphia at the time in 1940s.
Mhm.
Um, so with Orrin C. Evans creating this, jumping from journalism and being outspoken in his own right,
Mhm.
especially for the time, what what do you see about Orrin C. Evans that makes you gravitate towards the history and creation of the book?
Yeah, I think you know, being a Black American is like to almost always have to have a reverence for history, right? Like my grandmother, just in my family, was the first in our family to go to college. She ended up with like an Ivy League master's degree. But she grew up on a farm. And so it's like, but that's the backdrop of my upbringing. It's like education is super important. And for me, Black history has just always been fun for me. And so when you find out about these like sort of little known figures and their accomplishments, it's like fuel to kind of keep you going, especially in times like these we're living in now, where it's very tense politically. And so it's really fun to be able to look back and understand that people did a lot more when the stakes were a lot higher, if that makes sense, right? So, like someone like Orrin C. Evans, who is a news reporter, but you know, you would think that he would be a sports reporter, which he did some sports reporting, but he's like a hard hitting journalist, like traveling, doing exposés on the black soldiers' treatment after World War II, like just pushing the envelope in the best way. And so for someone to be that principled, to be that courageous in a time like that, to then take all of that energy and tenacity and say, you know what, I'm going to start a comic book company because I think these comics can be a great way to reach the next generation and really provide some uplift for the community. So for someone to do that and then go through all the steps, create a whole company, source the paper, the artists, and all that stuff, write the stories, or at least have other people write the stories with him, and see it through is just that's an accomplishment in and of itself. And I think some of the unfortunate lore after the fact just kind of increases the legend. Like to have done something so radical, even though like the pages of the comics are not all that radical. Like if I tell you this guy's doing exposés on like black soldiers in World War II, you would think the comic would be like super political and like, maybe even anti-white for the time. And then you read the comic and it's like there's none of that there. It's just cool stories featuring black people. And so, but for someone to have that frame of mind to do all of that, it feels like a revolutionary act. And I think I gravitated toward it because of that.
Yeah. And something that I had noted, especially in the script for the video, but as I was doing research as well, I had basically said the farther back you go in comic history, the more you become sick with how ingrained racism was to the early foundations of the medium,
Mm.
especially considering they were originally targeting children. And so seeing a counterpoint with just propping up black protagonists
Hmm.
and not really even making a spectacle of it. It's just saying nope, here's a black detective, here is a black college educated scientist that's
Hmm.
working for the newly formed United Nations. Like we can have fairy tales, we can have adventure stories, we can have noir stories, like comedy. It's something that was just jaw dropping from the start is branching in different areas and saying, no, it doesn't have to be the connotation of, you know, black people are in this and we need to be the antithesis or anything like that. It's just saying, no, we're telling stories not for the people that are portraying us in a negative light and with caricatures. Like we're breaking the caricature and we're making comics for us. Like
Right.
that is the representation aspect. I loved so much, but then also being able to show multiple different genres as well. And I love this book so much. But
Yeah.
like what you were saying about Orrin C. Evans and being politically outspoken, I feel like even for the time, the the radical nature is just looking at the market and saying we can do that too. And
Yeah.
the title of the video will inevitably be uh, when black when black creators rebelled against the comic industry, because this book is an act of rebellion. It is saying that we can be on your level without stooping to your level, if that makes sense.
For sure.
And you know everything about it, it always makes me so happy. Just obviously, white guy, um being able to find people of color in history that are unsung heroes. um you know where would we be if not for this book? In the similar way, where would the comic industry be without Dwayne McDuffie? Where would we be without Christopher Priest? These foundational figures in comics that we remember today, but how easy would it have been to have this book faded from history because, Chris Robinson didn't pull it out of the grave and
Right.
make sure that it's widely distributed. And, that's what I love about comics. It's finding those creators that might have been lost to time and yanking them back and educating people about how key people with diverse voices are to the medium of comics.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And, I think without Chris's work, this would have just been like a fun, like trivia question on a comic Jeopardy board. Right. But it's like like you said, the revolutionary act is the storytelling itself. And so even something as simple as like Lion Man, I'm sure we'll get into it later, But like reading the Lion Man story and then seeing like the some of the similarities that Lion Man's whole upbringing or story has to Black Panther, which doesn't come out for like another 20 years after the fact. And it's just like, okay, that's cool. And it's like it's not just, oh, cool, Black people were doing this in the 40s. It's like, look at the types of storytelling there were. Like some of this is like straight up folk stories that you might have heard, like, growing up in the South, you hear people talking, jive, quote unquote, and like just sort of laid back storytelling. But then we're getting noir stories. We're getting that really cool like prose section with the kidnapped kids. Like, so there's all these different types of storytelling, and it's clearly meant to be entertainment. With a little bit of uplift, a little bit of like preachy at different points as well. But it is the best type of fun. And I think like I said, to be able to read the varied types of stories that are being told there is a real treat.
Yeah. Well, going from that point, I guess we can start jumping into some of the characters.
Yeah.
Namely, we open up the book with Ace Harlem, obviously adopting some of the mannerisms of a Dick Tracy archetype, but being able to be a folk hero adjacent, where it's a counterpoint to the Dick Tracys of the world. And something I had noted is being in a predominantly Black neighborhood at the time. We don't see one white person, obviously, because it was in the middle of segregation. But I had done research into Black police officers at the time, because I thought that was interesting that the first choice and something that you were leading with is a Black detective in a predominantly Black neighborhood. And only to find out that it was uncommon, but it wasn't unheard of to have Black police officers. They were given less authority than white police officers, and usually relegated to just patrolling in predominantly Black neighborhoods.
Mm.
So they were segregated even on the force.
Right.
And I thought it was very poignant to start off this book and saying, we don't even need to address what's going outside. Just, making our character that is the embodiment of somebody who would be a real life defender of a marginalized community, and, stopping the robbers and dissecting the crime scene. There's something about that that's just so meaty, and you can definitely see where it would end up going down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. It's aspirational in the best way. Like, I don't know. I'm thinking about like kids picking up this book and being like, oh man, I want to be a police officer. And he's so aspirational. Like he even like it ends the book with the PSA, like, go to church, stay in good, clean sports. Like, and so it's like he's clearly the figure that everyone wants to be like Ace Harlem. And he's a cool cat, man. He's a cool looking guy. So I love that aspect of it.
Yeah. No, and that was very interesting to I mean, he basically jumps off the page immediately. I mean, we have the introduction by Orrin C. Evans. We go into the story by for Ace Harlem, and then having that end ad and just, hey, you better act good, and also we'll see you next month.
Right.
And it was just like, yeah, like that he was, I think that they knew what they had with him, where it's
Mm.
just, this automatically stands out, and we know that this will be like a Batman, like a representation of the comic.
Yeah.
And
It's like McGruff, the crime dog,
yeah,
or like Smokey the Bear, or even like what is it, Whiz Kid from the Burger King Kids Club in the 90s. Like there's always that one that like just jumps out at you and it's like, yeah, I gotta see that guy every time I come to Burger King. Like, and
yeah.
that's who Ace Harlem is in this book.
Well, moving from Ace Harlem, we actually get to go into the story of the Doodillies.
Mhm.
And I wanted to get your take on this story, specifically because I loved it from the jump, but the beautiful aspect of it is creating this fairy tale dreamlike scenario. And there's something about the pencils that evoke some of the if you're familiar with the Scrooge McDuck books
Yeah.
of Don Rosa and um I can't remember the
Carl
other artist.
Barks.
Yes, Sparks.
Mhm.
uh it evokes some of that, and I just felt myself spending so much time on it and just panel to panel storytelling and whatnot. But I wanted to
Right.
get your take on the story.
That's funny. You're right. Like I'm looking through it now, and there is definitely a sense of whimsy in it. I think on first read, this was the hardest one for me to connect with. Um, because I'm like, what are these characters? And you've got one who's got wings, you got another who's got a tail and fins, and it's like they're ones of the air or ones of the land and ones of the sea. And what their bond is just trying to find something they can both eat. It's like I'm not going to eat my brother the bird, and I'm not going to eat my brother the fish. So what are we going to do? Um, but really the fun of it, like you said, is just kind of dealing with these dreamy sequences. And yeah, I think for me, just looking at it, another time, there's something about it that just feels childlike. And, I don't know who the intended audience for this was. Like, for the most part, all comics were made for kids. And so you imagine maybe you give this to like, a brother sister duo, and the sister's really into Do Dillies, and the brother's really into Ace Harlem. And it's just one of those things where it's like you get more mileage out of the book. But yeah, no, it's definitely fun. It's a fun thing to look at. Even the voices, like I don't want to get into like caricatures on voices because I'm terrible with that, but it's just like the dialect of the characters and just how they speak to one another. That's all I got for this is that it's fun.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with it. And like we're talking about uh with the multi purpose of like audience.
Mhm.
So you have the noir stories, you have the fairy tale stories, obviously wanting to be literally E is for everybody.
Mhm.
Uh having this be able to be passed down between family members. Mom has something with the aspects of the fashion and like little eggy and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and dad will most likely uh like Ace Harlem or Lion Man, like
Yeah.
being able to pass this down. And it becomes a stark contrast whenever you go from the Doodillies to
Mhm.
a 2-page thriller of kids being kidnapped. And
Right.
it's like I didn't realize how locked in I was until I finished and I turned the page and I was like, what do you mean there's not more? I was like, this is so great. Like I just want to read a full book of this just prose. And
Right.
I was just completely locked in. And it's like you go from the fairy tale then just into a thriller,
Mhm.
and being able to experience that whiplash, you're like, they were really wanting to expand outside of the one trick poniness of, here's an action adventure book, there you go, and instead get everybody with it.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so many varied stories in this book. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with like the black barbershop experience, right? But when I'm growing up, you spend like all morning in the barbershop. I'm the oldest. Well, it was just me and my little brother. But it's me, my brother, and my dad. So we all got to get haircuts. And typically there is a stack of magazines. And I don't know what it is about barbers. They don't order kids magazines. It's Jet, it's Ebony. You might see a King magazine in there. If you're lucky, there's some back issues of like The Source or Double XL. But the point is, whatever is there is what you're going to pick up. And I imagine that this may have been intended to be circulated through barbershops as well. Because it's like the fact that that 2-page thriller and Do Dillies and say Sugarfoot all exist in the same book. It's like there's no way all of this was meant for one person to pick up and enjoy.
Hmm. And it's communal in that aspect.
Right.
And you look back at some of the comics that were being published at the time. Obviously Superman and Batman were going on simultaneously, but you usually would see one issue and it's three stories
Hmm.
with those characters. And this is able to broach the idea of anthologies
Hmm.
and making it more community instead of here's three different stories, like one of those shorts like they would run on Cartoon Network. And here's three different stories, we don't know, we just didn't want to do a full episode, so here's a little bit here.
Right.
And instead it's branching out in the same way that you know, uh, television, cable, all of those will want to have something for everybody, and hitting on the different quadrants to make sure that, we have something that the adults would enjoy, but also they don't have to have their hands covering their kids' eyes whenever they're watching it.
Yeah.
And that is just something that makes me so happy about comics in general, literally being for everyone and being able to pass that down, um, turning it from an individual perspective, and now it's a community event.
Yeah. It's for everybody. I think that kind of highlights when you see stuff like this, it highlights the fact that comics were like the entertainment of the day. Like there wasn't TV at the time. So it's whatever audio drama you're finding on the radio and these funny pages and newspapers and magazines and whatnot. Like, so to be at the absolute peak of print where like everything is going into like millions of copies sold in circulation, right? Like that's cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, and going from that point and going into the next story with Lion Man, and you had hinted at it a little bit earlier with uh, basically being the archetype for Black Panther and what he would go on to be. And something that stood out to me immediately within the narration pages were establishing who Lion Man is and
Mhm.
saying, starting off in Africa and saying he's American born, college educated, scientist that was sent by the United Nations, which had just then been established,
Right.
which, in the perspective of the time, I'm sure is the authority on worldwide unification. It is
Right.
the overarching, um, you know, governing body, and them specifically finding this one man and tasking him with basically saving the world from its own destruction,
Mhm.
protecting this mountain full of uranium. Obviously, towards the latter, you see the parallels between Lion Man and Black Panther, uh,
Mhm.
protecting a material that would be victim to conquest, and
Right.
obviously retooling that to have T'Challa be African and a king. I think that this story provides so much nuance into a depiction of a Tarzan archetype.
Mhm.
Really embracing the action adventure, but
Mhm.
also, sprinkling in comedy because we have Bubba, who is the sidekick, the Robin,
Mhm.
some might say. Uh, and it's just hijinks. It's
Right.
You're playing the straight man and the, goofy sidekick.
Right.
And at the end of the day, where we are tasked with protecting something that's going to blow up the world if we can't stop it.
Mhm.
So those early ideas of superheroics and what a superhero would actually be, it that I kept on coming back to it, and I was like, this is the 40s. Like, they didn't have really archetypes of what could be done in general. So seeing this done and a subversion right out of the bat was just jaw dropping.
Yeah. Even the idea that this United Nations would send a black man, college educated or not, but send a black man to protect a resource in Africa, right? Like that, that it feels revolutionary. It's just on its face. Like it's like how it, in a world where you're like, hey, black soldiers can't get treated well after the war,
Mm-hmm.
you're also like, actually, this brother got sent to Africa to protect this deposit of uranium. Now, I guess the question could be like, is it under United Nations control? Like, what's going on? But it certainly feels like we're protecting this mound from those who would seek to exploit it, dare I say, colonize it, right? Like, that's crazy. That's so groundbreaking for the time.
Mm-hmm. And I latched on to a lot of Lion Man and Ace Harlem as well. And whenever I was talking to Chris, I was saying that there's such a fully fleshed out character, or at least that first introduction has
Yeah.
so much meat on the bone that I could see it going forward. How would Lion Man look, you know, during the 80s?
Mhm.
Or, what I had said specifically is, what if Milestone was never created and instead they brought back these characters? What would
Mhm.
Milestone's version of these characters look like? That's the world that I want to just peek into and
Mhm.
see, you know, these characters living on. And, you know, thankfully, we're actually able to see that in the collections, in the collection of the book, being
Mhm.
able to tell new stories with these characters because they are public domain, and you get to see a snapshot of what they would look like today. Modern storytelling told by Black creators currently in the industry, and a diverse spectrum of stories that are being told and continuing the lifeblood of the practice of these books.
Right. Yeah. And what's your favorite of the sort of future stories? I guess we'll call them.
Oh, I You know, I had thought about it a few times, trying to figure out which one stood out the most. I think Ace Harlem, the crime noir aspect, that being updated, that one
Mhm.
was significant to me. Um, but I think what I love the most is the Lion Man uh reintroduction. That
Yeah.
there I love something There's something that's so at the heart of what was established, and now seeing this updated with, modern sensibilities and depicting those stories,
Mhm.
it makes like the little kid in me so happy. I'm like, yeah, I want to see like a Tarzan character in the modern day. That's so great.
I like the humor in the retelling of Lion Man. Like just the I have the upper hand and I know it. Like that's fun to see communicated on page.
Yeah. And I mean, all of the artists that were able to pick up, I had mentioned it earlier with, the Doodillies, and then we have Lil Eggy, and like we're able to see these continuations and playing with different aspects of genre and what could be done. I really appreciated there's a Afrofuturistic story in the original publishing, and being
Mhm.
able to translate that into today. I mean, they look like political cartooning
Mhm.
where it's just one-off jokes, and the jokes hit even from the original publication. I was like, yeah, this is really good. I see what you're going for, and you nailed it completely. Obviously, with them having experience in uh, journalism and newspapering, cartooning,
Mhm.
um, being able to translate that over, but seeing how the form would have broken with four of those being on one page, I wish we could have seen, that practice take over for some aspect of time where it is just collections of political cartooning or just one-off beats with each panel being a joke that are completely self-explanatory and individual to themselves. All of these aspects stand out to me just because of the ideas presented being fully established.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny like that. Hat chicks on parade is what's got you like, yeah, man, I need that. It's one of those things. Like I remember, my mom used there was this magazine called the South Side Shopper. I don't know if it's just local to my area or what, but it was like a little coupon book. But it also had little cartoons in it, basically just like that, like little one panel gag strips. And it's just crazy the things that stick in your memory. And but that's exactly what this reminds me of. But I love it. You're right. Like in the remake, Jasmine Hatcher does like a sort of updated version of this. Like if back in the 40s, this was just kind of like, here's how the fashionable ladies dress. It's like, nah, here's how we are taking this into the future. Like, amazing.
Yeah. And speaking on the added material, do you have a essay that was included that stands out the most to you?
I want to say when I read this the first time, I was immediately taken by, I believe Kiana Whitted wrote a piece in here. And yeah, she did. So let me figure out where, let's find the one that she wrote.
It looks like
Okay,
it's
yeah.
on
She wrote
page
like the history.
57.
Yeah. She just wrote like the, just her thoughts on and analysis on the history of the book. And I think because I'm such a nerd, I just like that context. It struck me. Um, but it's fun to see these stories that like, of course, we committed this book to the printed page. So it's like, I'm sure there that Orrin Evans had thoughts of like how this would be received, you know, in posterity, like for the history and everything going on after the fact. But to see this analyzed by a college professor, you know, 50, 75 years later, it's like that's amazing. It's amazing that we study this with the same like it gives me the same feeling as like when you first heard that there were like people studying Tupac's poetry
Yeah.
in college classes, right? Like um and it's just like we're worthy of that. We're worthy of that literary analysis. Because when I was growing up, the only stuff we talked about like this was like Mark Twain and Steinbeck and George Orwell. It's like, that's cool, but it's not this. And so it's
Yeah.
like for this to get that treatment, and it's a comic book of all things. It's wild to me.
Yeah. And, this the breaking down of the history alongside the book
Hmm.
and where we go moving forward. There's references to Matt Baker, the book Invisible Men, but also at the end of the essay, there's also the citations,
Hmm.
which that gave me chills. Uh, you know, I love citing sources, but also just seeing almost a full page of these are works that I'm referring to, and here, like passing this on to the next reader and
Yeah.
saying, not if you read my article, that's great. If you want to know more, here you go. And the it's just something that really spoke to me, and I was just like, there are so many dissections of work, comics in general, but specifically Black creators. And I feel, especially in the age that we are, we have Black creators in the industry, and I would love to see that number rise. I would
Yeah.
love to expand the voices. A point that I make in the video is a case for diversity, a case for perspective, because we can only redo the same 5 stories by old white guys that have been in the industry 40 years and peaked when they were 20, and now like we have all of these up and coming voices that are taking comics by storm. I mean, my personally, I love Vita Ayala.
Hmm.
Their the X-Men book that they were doing,
Children of the Atom.
not
Oh,
that one, it was the New Mutants.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I That was the only time I've cared about X-Men characters. I
Mm,
was locked into that book so much, and I was so excited to see them jump into Static. And there's great things being able to continue Milestone,
mhm.
but I don't want Milestone to be the stopping point.
Right.
I, expanding beyond that, being able to continue with these creators, whether it's creator owned, which it's thankfully representation is pretty healthy and creator owned, um, but being able to forward our medium, we need perspectives that are outside of the standard fare, crusty white guys that have been there for way too long. Uh, and that kind of hits on what you were talking about. We would dissect Mark Twain, but now we have literature from Black voices that we can dissect as well. And I want to see more voices in this industry, and basically using that as a call to action and saying, we're doing good, but we could do so much better.
For sure. And this is the part where, I think it's easy to like, talk about the lack of representation. And even in that, like, even in making that statement, it almost serves as a way to, not serves as a way to, but it almost silences like the work that a lot of cool creators are doing now. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put on a spotlight, right? Like, we've got people like Stephanie Williams, Vita Ayala that you just named. They both did Nubia together. Um, Greg Elise has been doing Is Nana the Were Spider stories on the convention circuit forever. And it's funny because we just saw Anansi make a big return in the Ultimate or Miles Morales Spider-Man book.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, we saw him in the Static Team Up book last year or a couple years ago. So Greg Elise is doing great work. There's people like Omari Malik, who's got this Blacktooth Battalion and Blacktooth Publishing. There are so many Black and Brown creators. Greg Burnham, who did Tuskegee Airs with Marcus Williams, like that book is amazing. And shout out to Fabrice Sapolsky and Crystal for Fair Square Comics, and they're doing these noir is the new black stories, like telling all these short stories with these like if you like Ace Harlem, you'll love Noir is the new black. And they're kickstarting their issues one at a time. Those are really fun. John Jennings has the whole Abram or the whole Megascope line at Abrams Comic Arts. And he's been adapting Octavia Butler's novels into graphic novel format for the last few years. So there's a lot. There is a lot of really cool work being done by Black voices, whether or not the big two or like the sort of major publishers want to give them that space. Like they're taking it, they're taking up the
Yeah.
space, and I love it.
Yeah. And I talk about it all the time, but the broader comics are, the more we expand outside of, everybody says big two, and then we have Image, so you throw Image in there.
Mhm.
But the wider the scope for comics, the more imprints, the more publishers, that is only helping comics as a whole. and creators, like you were saying, shopping around the con circuits. Like that is how we get the foot in the door and be able to, find those opportunities and reading those books. Something that, I can't get my hands on because it's not on, Amazon Kindle, the digital download, or it's not at my shop. But
Yeah.
I find out about somebody at, a local con, a statewide con, a national con. But being able to see these new voices, that's what it's all about. It's not, we don't need people to tell one story. The way that we relate to everyone, no matter the medium, no matter if it's comics, movies, novels, um, we're able to relate through the human experience. And even though our lived experience is not the same as somebody else, it's still good to get another perspective and another voice so you can be fully realized in your understanding of others, and then branching out from there. Uh, that's what comics are all about, and it's always something that gets me excited about, you know, finding new voices, finding new authors, artists. It's not only a medium of writers, but artists, inkers, colorists, being able to see and break down every aspect of comics and seeing how wide that net goes. It's always a positive, and it always blows me away to see, you know how beautiful comics can be and how inclusive comics can be. uh it's always a good thing, and I'm happy to be in comics.
Yeah, for sure. There is no greater community than the comics community. I think the joy of literature and art as a whole is that it helps us reflect the human experience. And I think the more perspectives that you find, the more you realize like we are all very, very similar, despite the differences that people want to highlight and profit from. It's like we're sharing this planet and we're sharing a whole lot more than that if you just look a little bit deeper than the surface.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I didn't want to take up too much of your time. And of course, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this. And, I really appreciate it just in general.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Obviously, BJ Kicks everywhere, but where can people find you? The platforms? What do you got cooking? The whole nine.
Sure. So, I am BJ Kicks. And so I'm at BJ Kicks on all the social platforms. My YouTube channel is called Comics Are Dope. I am slowly ramping up content for 2026. You can expect to see my weekly new comic book day breakdown videos, as well as some retro reviews. I'll be doing more deep dives this year because people like Kirby doing these video essays just got me feeling super jealous. So you'll see a little bit of content like that. I can't be Kirby, but I can be me. And then just more reviews of all these amazing stories, some that you'll see from like the major publishers, and a lot more that you won't see, some that you'll only find on the convention circuit or if you're looking in the right places. So definitely subscribe to Comics Are Dope if you want more conversations and stories spotlighted like the one we just covered today.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for watching, dear viewers. Like, subscribe to Comic Crackle, or don't. I don't mind.